morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sergeant Travis Wells. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Missoula Police Department. In a moment, Chief White will be making a statement, and then at the conclusion of that, he will be prepared to take questions. A reminder that we are only taking questions from media representatives today. We are also streaming live on the City of Missoula YouTube channel for others to view. So if you're ready with that, please allow me to introduce Chief Jason White.
Good morning. I am Chief Jason White with the Missoula Police Department. I'm here today to provide information about the officer-involved shooting that occurred on November 7th. Let me start off by saying this is a tragic event for everyone who was involved, and I offer my condolences to the Brown family. At approximately 5:22, a 911 call was made regarding an in-progress partner family member assault at a residence on the 2300 block of Sherwood Lane. The information being provided by the caller indicated the individual was armed with a knife and was actively involved in assaulting the victims. Officers were dispatched to the call at approximately 5:23 p.m., and the first officer arrived on scene at approximately 5:27 p.m. Due to the exigency of preventing further assault on the victims, the initial responding officer approached the front door of the residence. The officer knocked on the door and announced police. When the front door was opened, the officer was immediately confronted by Mr. Brown, who was armed with a knife. The officer ordered him to drop the knife, which he refused to do. At the same time, the victims were still inside, and the officer took efforts to get the victims out of the residence. In doing so, the officer used himself as a barrier between the victims and Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown threw a chair at the officer as the victims were leaving the residence. The officer continued to give commands for Mr. Brown to drop the knife. He failed to obey those commands and began advancing at the officer in an assaultive manner with the knife. The officer discharged his taser in an effort to stop the assault on him. The taser was ineffective, and Mr. Brown continued his assault on the officer. Fearing for his own life and safety, the officer fired 4 rounds from his department-issued weapon. The involved officer and a backup officer who had just arrived on scene immediately began life-saving efforts and called for emergency medical assistance. Despite these efforts, Mr. Brown succumbed to his injuries and died at the scene. The investigation of this incident is being handled by the Montana Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation. This was done in accordance with department protocol and by my request to ensure an impartial investigation. We are fully participating in the ongoing investigation with DCI to make sure they have access to all of the information they need to conduct a thorough and independent investigation. Once DCI has completed its investigation, it will go directly to the Missoula County Attorney's Office. In accordance with Montana state law, the Missoula County Attorney's Office will conduct a coroner's inquest. In addition to these 2 investigations, the Missoula Police Department will conduct an administrative investigation using the information from DCI to determine the officer's compliance with departmental policies and procedures. The officer involved in this incident has 5.5 years of law enforcement experience. The officer has never been the recipient of any disciplinary actions or citizens' complaints. In his time with the Missoula Police Department, the officer has received compliments from the public for his professionalism and has earned a life-saving award. That is the end of my prepared statement. I will now take questions.
Madison Donor, you've been unmuted.
Hi, Chief White. This is Madison Donor with KECI. Question for you. How many officer-involved shootings have there been in 2020 thus far with MPD?
This is the second one. There was one in January of 2020.
Thank you.
Spencer Schott, you've been unmuted.
Travis, this is Spencer Schott with ABC Fox Montana. We were wondering if you could give us any more details about what type of knife you had and how many shots were fired by police.
So I was having difficulty hearing your question through my audio, but as I understand it, your question is the type of knife involved and the number of shots fired by the officer.
Yes.
So there were two knives involved in this, and based on the preliminary information that we've received from DCI, they were both substantially sized kitchen knives, and the officer fired 4 rounds.
Seaborn Larson, you've been unmuted.
Hey, Chief, are you able to release the names of the officers involved and lay out a timeline for how long they'll be on administrative leave?
So in regards to releasing the officers' names, the investigation is still ongoing with DCI. We are only in the preliminary stages of this. Once DCI has finished their investigation, and I have to rely on them to provide timeframes, then we will circle back around and have a discussion about releasing the officers' names at that time. The officer was placed on administrative leave and is still on administrative leave pending the investigation from DCI.
Thank you.
Missoulian newspaper, you've been unmuted.
Hey, Travis. Yeah, this is Michael Merlo from the Missoulian. I guess just some follow-up questions. You said that Brown had 2 knives. You found 2 knives at the scene, or did he reportedly have 2 knives with him? And then I guess the follow-up to that was, where was he shot, if you can release that information?
For the 2 knives, 1 knife was involved in the initial primary or the initial partner family member assault, and then he acquired a second knife at the time of his encounter with our officer. And we do not have autopsy results at this point in time to release where Mr. Brown was struck.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess my other question is how many days are MPD officers trained in de-escalation?
So de-escalation training is an ongoing process. Whenever we have use of force training, it always includes components of de-escalation. Additionally, our officers go through crisis intervention training, which is a 40-hour course. And in addition to that, based on the training budget that we received, we have an additional 8 hours of de-escalation training coming up late winter, early spring. We are currently getting that scheduled for our officers to attend.
Okay, thanks. And do you think that is sufficient, Chief White?
We are always talking about de-escalation. So it is an ongoing process. So yes, it is sufficient because it is something that we do all of the time, in addition to their basic training that they get at the academy. Through their daily briefing trainings, there are portions of de-escalation that occur in those trainings. So it is a continuous and ongoing effort in de-escalation and crisis intervention.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is just, why did it take nearly a week to just address the incident?
We have to rely on DCI as an independent investigator to get us information. We do not want to interfere with their investigation because we want it to be independent and impartial. So we have to give DCI the amount of time they need to gather evidence, collect statements, and the like and provide us with information.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Hey, Chief White, Connor McCauley with KPAX.
Yeah, Connor.
Hey, so how rare is it for tasers to be rendered ineffective in these kind of situations?
How rare? No use of force is 100% guarantee. So, when you're in a dynamic critical incident, things don't always work right. So we will be looking into, once we have all of the information regarding why the taser didn't work, then that is something that we'll take a look at. But, it does happen.
How many of those 4 shots struck Brown?
I do not have the autopsy results yet from DCI to release any of that information.
In the 5 years of this officer's career, has he ever had to discharge his weapon in a manner like this?
No.
Okay. And then was there any body cam or any video footage of the incident?
Yes, the incident was captured by the officer's body-worn camera.
Does DCI then get that, I'm assuming?
Yes, DCI has that as part of their evidence and as part of their investigation package. And when they are completed, it will be turned over to the Missoula County Attorney's Office.
Thank you.
Seaborn, do you have another question?
I do. Thank you. So Mayor John Engen said earlier this week during a council meeting that the new mobile crisis response unit, which is set to begin next week, would not have responded to a call like this. And I think a call like this is kind of in part why I think the community wanted a mobile crisis response unit. I mean, are you trying to work with city officials in any capacity to try to change that or try to bring that mobile crisis response unit into calls like this, where things might be more dangerous than these folks are trained for, but could possibly prevent a different outcome?
So this call for service was not someone in crisis. The call for service that went to 911 was for an active, ongoing partner family member assault. So this is not a call that would have gone straight to the mobile crisis intervention team. So what would happen is if officers were able to get to the scene and render it safe and determine that there was someone in crisis or who needed assistance, then the officers have the ability to call the mobile crisis team in to provide assistance and take over where necessary, where there is not a ongoing public safety threat to anyone present at the scene. So we are working with the mobile crisis team and its management to ensure that is a function of how things will roll out.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Last call for questions.
Right. Thank you for your time.
Connor?
I was just going to ask just a timeline on DCI's investigation, but that might be a better question for DCI.
Yeah, Connor, I hadn't clicked off yet. Yeah, that is a question for DCI.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, with that, thank you very much.